We're going to pick back up looking at pandas, starting out with how multi-indexed data frames can work. These are a very powerful tool for working with all of your data in a single data frame instead of managing many data frames at once. Welcome to another MetPy Monday. Hello, I'm John Lehman, a software engineer for Unidata. On this week's MetPy Monday, I want to show you multi-index pandas data frames. This is something that I really just came to appreciate recently when I was dealing with a rather complicated data set that had lots of difficult data storage problems, and it felt like there should be an easier solution than writing my own data storage hierarchy, maybe making some classes. It felt like this was a solved problem, and sure enough, it was using multi-index data frames. So I've come up with a little example here for you, where I've got some data that probably looks familiar. This comes from the Oklahoma Mesonet, but I've done some manipulation here. So in one file, I have several observations from many different stations. You can see here I've got station IDAB, and then FAIR, BURN, and BIXB. They all also have a time column, 0, 5, 10, and so on. So what I really want to be able to do is query this data for, okay, show me everything from station IDAB, or show me everything from a given time. We know how to do operations like that on a data frame that maybe contains one time for many stations or one station for many times, but we need a more complicated data structure now. So let's read this in and start taking a look at how we might be able to do this. We're going to import pandas as PD. And then I'm going to read the CSV file. So it's multi-station data.txt. I need to delimit on white space. And let's just look at the top of the file here. Okay, so we see I've got all of the standard variables from the Mesonet at this station. Now let's look at the tail. So it's a different station now, just like we saw in the text file. So maybe I want to try to get just one station. So I could say something like data frame, where data frame station ID is equal to BIXB. Okay, so that just gives me the Bixby observations. And now maybe I want to get a given time step. So I could assign this to some intermediate data frame, and then I could look in that intermediate data frame where in the intermediate data frame the time column is equal to 20. So we got what we wanted, but that's really pretty kludgy, and I don't like that solution. So we're going to see an easier way to do this. We're going to call dataframe.setIndex. Remember, index is it's still a series, but it is this column over here on the left that's in bold that you can use to do some more advanced operations on, which we'll look at in some future videos. So if I had many stations at a given time, then I would set a station as an index because they have to be unique. Or if I had many times at a given station, I would set time as an index. But in this case, I have many stations and many times. So you might think this is a hopeless situation. But we can also pass setIndex an iterable, or a list here, of station ID and time. And I'm going to say do the operation in place. Now if we look at our data frame, we see station ID and time are differently formatted now, and they're both bold. So when I hover over a station ID in this nice HTML table display, this entire section is highlighted. Same with fair and burn and Bixby. Now, in each of those, I have the time index. So we could switch this around, of course. I could put time, station ID. And we're going to have to rerun the read cell because we're modifying it in place here. And now time is on the outer, but it's not grouped quite as nicely. To me, it makes a lot more sense to do it the way that we had before with station ID first and then time. So let me rerun these cells. But I just want to show you why I've chosen to do it this way. So now we can start pulling data out of here, and it's not too much different than what you might expect. So if I call df.lock on station BIXB, then I get only the Bixby station. This is the data frame that was returned that just has time as an index. So we've removed one of those multi-indexes. Okay, let's try this with a little bit more advanced slice. So df.lock. Now I'm going to pass a tuple in here. So I want BIXB, and then from that return, so from this data frame that's up here above, I want time 0. So now I just get one row out of that data frame. Let's say I just want to access the air temperature. Then outside of that tuple, we pass tair. So this says out of my multi-index data frame, df, get me index BIXB. From that result, get me index 0. And then from that result, give me the value of the series tair. So we get down to one value. This reads so much more nicely than doing all of those conditional Boolean checks, and it's also a lot faster. So I would definitely encourage you to use multi-index data frames for situations like this. But now I hear you saying, well, what if I wanted to get the value, or if I wanted to get the observations rather, for the 0 time for all stations? That's a little bit harder with lock. You could do it, but it would get pretty gross. What we're really looking for is what Pandas calls a cross-section. So df.xs for cross-section. Not a huge fan of the not descriptive name there. The value that we're looking for, and then which level of our multi-index we want to look at. So in this case, time. So now we have a data frame returned that has eliminated the time index. It's pulled out all the 0 values, and our index is just station ID. So this is a great way to deal with things like soundings or surface observations, buoy data, many of the things we deal with in meteorology, where we have multiple stations taking measurements over time, but it's not necessarily gridded data like in a model where we have an XY grid at many levels at many times. This is a nice intermediate solution where something like X-ray might be a little bit too heavy of a hammer, but just juggling around many individual Pandas data frames can be slow, clunky, hard to manage, and this is a much more elegant solution. I hope that you found this video useful, and I'll see you on next week's MetPy Monday.